Hello, good evening to everybody. Nice to be with you. My name is John McConnell and I'm based down in London. And I've been with the Brahma Kumaris now for studying with them and teaching for over 30 years. And in case there's anybody who doesn't know about the Brahma Kumaris, I'll just briefly mention who we are. So we're a worldwide spiritual organization, started in India back in the 1930s. The organization was founded by a man whom we call Brahma Baba, and he had a series of visions about the future. And one of those visions was that women would play an important part in healing the world. And he started channeling lots of spiritual knowledge, as a result of which many people gathered around him, and about 350 people, mainly women, plus a few men and some children, formed a closed community for about 14 years. And during that time, they studied meditation and all sorts of ways in which to empower themselves. And then they went out in pairs around India to begin with. Wherever they went, a center was set up, a meditation center, teaching Raj Yoga meditation. And so the organization is quite unusual in that it's female-led, because the founder handed over all his wealth to a group of 8 women. And the idea was to show basically that women, you know, have an important part to play in the world, and they really are the hope for the world, in the sense that men have ruled the world for many centuries, and things aren't as good as they could be. So that was the thinking behind it. And now there's centers all around the world. The majority are in India. And the message basically is, which we try to give people, is to remind them of who they are. There was more to us than just a body. There is a being or a spirit or a soul in the body. And that being is innately good and innately peace-loving. And so to remind everybody of that, we have this 2-word mantra or introduction. We're always using it, and lots of you who are watching will already know it, and that is Om Shanti. So Om, I'm a soul, Shanti, peace. So I am a peaceful soul. And all our activities are offered free of charge as a service to the community. We all work as volunteers, and basically we like to share and empower and help people to understand, you know, what's going on in themselves and what's going on in the world and why it's going on. So really everything I'm going to be talking about, you know, is connected to the teachings of the Brahma Kumaris, and in particular the content of the Raj Yoga meditation course. So if you've never taken that course, then I suggest, you know, you have a go at it, because it's very interesting and it will give you answers to everything that's going on in the world. You know, why it's a mess, what can be done about it, and what the future holds. And it has given me, you know, a lot of comfort and support and empowerment over the years, because I've always been a bit of a social activist. I've always wanted the world to be in a better state than it has been. And earlier on in my life, I tried my best to help change the world, you know, through my work as a prison governor, and then as a social worker, and then latterly as a stress management trainer. And so I've always wanted things to be better, because there's always been things around that needed changing. So I know we're going through a lot of storms and trouble now, but back in the 80s and the 90s, there were lots of things going on then too. You know, we had the Iraq War, We had lots of cuts in government expenditure. And I can remember, taking part in sit-ins in the office, trying to save, cuts in social services at the time. And I can remember organising an event on the street, blocking the streets in Sheffield, where I lived at the time, when cruise missiles came to the UK. So there's always been challenges, there's always been things happening which have made us stop and think and wish things were better than they are. And when I came to the Brahma Kumaris, I discovered one of the first things was you can't change the world, you have to change yourself. And I think that's the essence of it in a way, because things will be as they are. That's not to say we don't want them to be different, but trying to change everything on an external level, my experience, and I think probably the experience of most people now, doesn't really work. And we're now, living in a time where the rate of change, the intensity of the change and the challenges is far greater than it's ever been. In the past, we may have had one or two things to deal with. At this moment in time, we seem to have everything to deal with, because it feels as if all the structures that we've relied on for so long are all crumbling. And it doesn't really matter where you look, you will see things are in a state of flux, and we can't really rely on anything or anyone anymore. And this can be, obviously very distressing, it can be depressing, and it can have a big impact on our lives, especially if you're in a situation, where, as some people are now, you're having to choose between heating or eating. I mean, it can't get more basic than that, can it? Or if you're among the, hundreds of thousands of people who don't have secure accommodation, or if you think of all the refugees, being housed in hotels, all the systems are crumbling. The ambulance service, the health service in general, people are wanting to do their best, but the system around them isn't supporting them anymore. And as I say, we could get upset and depressed about it, but will that help us? Will I feel better if I get miserable and depressed? I don't think so. It's going to really make things even worse. And whilst all these changes are going on, there is new life underneath. There are new ideas coming up. There are new ways of thinking and being, which are gaining power. So, for example, who would have thought there'd be over 1 million vegans in the country now? And this is, recent developments brought about by people's concern for animals, not wanting animals to suffer, brought about concern for the environment, because we're now very aware of all the environmental damage which has been done over decades, and the part that, animals, or our exploitation of animals, has caused in that. Like, I think, 60% of land now is, used for cows and other farm animals to produce meat for us to eat, produce milk for us to drink. If we look at it objectively, it's a very, what's the word, inefficient system. I think it takes, 6 kilos of grain to produce 1 kilo of meat, for example. So lots of people questioning things. Lots of people now are becoming more independent, because you can't rely on anything or anyone. You can't trust the media. You can't trust the politicians. And we're having to find our own truth. and our own way of dealing with things. Some people still are going down the political route with that, and getting into different ways of handling things, you know, through protest or through conspiracy theories and things like that. But again, that's not going to give us empowering solutions. So what I want to do really is highlight some of the benefits of taking a spiritual perspective on all of this and seeing the benefit in everything which is happening. And some people might say, benefit, you know, what benefits? And the Brahma Kumaris have a very nice saying, or deep saying, called "there's benefit in everything." And that means basically that whatever is going on in the world, either inside ourselves or outside of us, there will be some deeper significance to it. There will be some deeper, maybe hidden meaning. And, you know, I can look back over my own life, for example, and like being divorced. You know, I mean, I would say that was one of the worst moments of my life, you know, when it came to telling the children, you know, mum and dad are splitting up and living separately. And, you know, it took a lot of adjusting to. But I can see now with hindsight, there was lots of benefit in it. I became stronger, more independent, more capable. I developed various caring qualities which I may not have developed otherwise. I've learned to cook, manage my own home, and be totally independent of someone else to do it all or most of it for me. I mean, I used to do my best to help, but at that time, helping was just really putting the main responsibility on the other person and taking off a bit of pressure now and then. So it didn't go down too well. And I'm sure you've all had traumas and you've all had challenges which you've had to face in the past. And if you take the time out to stop and think about them, you will discover too, you know, that you've got strengths, you've got capabilities which you never really thought you had. And if you hadn't had that challenge, that loss, maybe that job change, that accident, you know, or illness, or whatever it may be, if you hadn't had that, you wouldn't have had the challenges and the changes which have helped to make you the person you are now. And all of us are the product of everything that's gone on in our life. And just as that applies to us as individuals, it also applies to communities, families, communities, to society at large. And one of the key things which is operating, and a lot of people forget about this, but is the law of karma. You know, what you give out will come back. So in a way, what we're seeing at the moment is the return of our karma on a societal level as well as on a personal level. You know, people might say, you know, well, all sorts really, where would you start? You know, every war, you know, what's all that about? That's the karma between countries. Conflict between religions. There's karma in everything. Somewhere along the line, someone has done something which has upset others. And as a result of that, you know, there has been a reaction. The environment, why is that playing up so much? I think we all know the answer. We're receiving the return of our karma for exploiting nature, for not respecting the laws of nature, for not looking after the animals, for not keeping the sea free of pollution, for not looking after the rivers and the animals, the birds. You know, everything is disappearing. And as a consequence of that, there are all those imbalances going on in terms of climate change and things like that. And we're now seeing nature reacting. And I think one thing we discovered from COVID is that nature is much more powerful than we are. Nature restored itself very quickly when it had the chance to. If you think about Venice, for example, you know, the fish returned to the canals and things like that. Birds started to increase because there weren't people around either deliberately killing them or hunting them or catching them in nets and things like that. So yes, we think about it on that level, everything is a return of karma. That is actually a good thing to remember, because just as we're receiving the return of what we've done in the past, it also gives us a clue as to how we can make things better in the future. So if I change my patterns of behavior, if I change my consumption patterns, if I change my attitude towards animals, if I choose to treat people with respect, if I choose to be kind and loving whenever and wherever I can, both as an individual and collectively, either as a country or as a continent, sooner or later, I, as an individual, we collectively will receive the return of that. And I think that's, you know, a very powerful message and a very hopeful message that there is, at the end of the day, and that the end of the day means it could be a while, obviously, before it all changes. At the end of the day, things can improve if we do the right things in the right way with the right understanding. And again, this is where spirituality helps, because it enables us to take a step back. It enables us to see the bigger picture. It enables us to separate ourselves from the material world, this physical world, which is only one part or one dimension of something which is much bigger, more complex, and more exciting than anything we've really contemplated so far. So let's just detach for a moment. So just sit there, do some slow, deep, gentle breathing. Diaphragm breathing is good. So breathing in through your nose, filling the lungs from the bottom to the top, and then holding the breath at the count of 3, and slowly releasing through the mouth. And first of all, just observe your breath going in and out of the body. Observe it going through your nose, into your lungs. Observe the lungs inflating like a pair of bellows. And observe the air coming out of your mouth. And now observe the impact that this slow, deep, gentle breathing is having on your body. Maybe your muscles are becoming more relaxed. Maybe your hands becoming warmer. Maybe your shoulders are feeling lighter. And now observe your feelings. Maybe you're feeling calmer or more peaceful. And now observe your thoughts. Maybe your thoughts are slowing down. Maybe your thoughts are being more positive. And now ask yourself the question, who is the observer? Who is the one observing the body, observing the feelings, observing the thoughts? And listen to the answer. What answer comes into your mind? Okay, now just bring your awareness back into the room where we are, where you are, and look around you and smile. And then just reflect on that exercise. I mean, did you learn anything from it? Hopefully, you may have discovered that you can control your mind and you can control your body. Maybe you've recognized that there's a connection between the way you think and the way you feel, both emotionally and physically. And hopefully you experience some peace because you detached from the body. You took that step back. You observed everything. And the observer actually is I, the soul. I, that being of consciousness or awareness. And this is the bit which is eternal. This is the bit or the part which comes into a body, ignites the body, if you like, because without the soul in the body will be inert. So the soul gives life to the body and then uses the body as a vehicle or a costume or a means of communicating and expressing and moving and making sense of this world in which to be at this moment in time in a particular body. And we're in this body so that we can experience life, so that we can express ourselves, our thoughts and our feelings, and more than that, our inner self, our inner qualities, our virtues, our powers. And although the outside world really makes us feel quite often powerless and hopeless and reduces us to a number, a national insurance number, or puts a label on us like patients or older person, whatever, underneath all those labels, each of us is the same. We might put a label like immigrant on some people, homeless person on another. And whatever that label is, underneath it there is a human being, and in that human being there is a soul. And all souls have that potential to be full of power and peace and love. And we have been like that in the past. And this is why we're feeling dissatisfied now, because we're not living up to our true nature. We feel there's a disconnection. We feel, I have been better than this, I have been kinder, I have been more loving. And we don't necessarily like who we've become. And then if we identify with things outside of us, we'll buy into, if we're not careful, all that media hype, all that advertising, all those advertising campaigns which are suggesting that, if you buy this or if you use that, and if you look like this, then you're going to be happy again. So our dissatisfaction is actually magnified and increased, and it's used as a hook to get us to say and do things which with no need to do. I hope this is making sense to you. It's taking us away even further from who we are. And of course, the more we buy into this consumption pattern, this proving ourselves to be big and strong and all the things, or beautiful, etc., etc., the more we go into all of that, the more chances there are for conflict, disagreement, more chances there are of greater dissatisfaction. And sooner or later, we take that dissatisfaction out on other people, the people that we love, or maybe as a society, we project it all onto another community or another country to distract ourselves from our own inner pain and our own needs to change ourselves. And of course, it's much easier to blame other people. It's much easier to look out there and say it's all the Russians' fault, and take sides in these conflicts between countries and say, yes, let's bomb them, let's give them more weapons, let's do X, Y, or Z, and to bring about peace. And actually, I think we all know you can't bring about peace through fighting and killing and exploiting. It's just like putting petrol on a fire, isn't it? It just burns ever stronger. But we're so geared to this blaming and so geared to focusing on others, we get drawn into it. And of course, this is going to make things even worse. So the world is a mess because we're a mess. The world is a mess because we haven't gone inside, we haven't understood ourselves, We haven't taken responsibility for our own thoughts, words, and actions. We've looked out there, we've blamed, we've complained, we've grabbed, we've exploited, all in the name of making progress. You know, we worship science now. That's the religion of a lot of people in the West in particular. And science has all the answers. Well, actually, science doesn't have all the answers. It can measure things on a material level. It can quantify things. It can explain why material things, how they're created. It knows nothing of the human spirit. It doesn't even acknowledge the existence of it quite often. I know now some scientists are moving into consciousness and trying to understand what that is, but for the vast majority of scientists, human beings are just controlled by their brains, and we're just another animal, one grade up from an ape. We just happen to have a bigger brain, and we happen to adapt more than they have, and we've developed communication skills, which we call words. In fact, all birds and animals have communication skills, and we're discovering more and more about them. They may not be audible to us, or we may, obviously we do not understand them, but they do communicate, and they do connect with each other in more peaceful ways than we do. We're not able to make the same judgments and criticisms that we do because we have an intellect which enables us to do these things, enables us to respond or react, enables us to make choices. And often our choices now are clouded by our consciousness, by forgetting who we are and just being pulled by the consciousness of being a body. And as a result, actually, there are 5 spiritual diseases, as they may be called, which are affecting us as individuals, and because we express these diseases in our minds and in our hearts and in our actions, they spread like wildfire. So we know how viruses spread because we've seen that with COVID and various other things. Well, there are spiritual viruses, if you like, which spread, and all our unhappiness, and this is, I think, one of the brilliant insights of the Raja Yoga meditation course, or the teachings of the Brahma Kumaris, all of our unhappiness and all the problems in the world are caused by 5 spiritual viruses or diseases, whatever you want to call them. And maybe before I tell you what they are, just think for a minute. What do you think is causing all the problems in the world? And if you have pen and paper, just write it down. Okay. I'll tell you what they are. And then at the end, if you want to make any comments, you can. I should have mentioned that before, actually. You could put things in, questions in the chat box if you want. So the 5 things are, very briefly, lust in all its different forms. And I think, you know, stop to think about how sex, for example, is used, sex appeal is used to sell everything and anything these days. Think of all the complications of it, all the breakup of marriages and relationships, the trading in of old models for new, to use that funny expression, all the unhappiness that's caused through abusing the sexual powers which we have. Greed, huge one. I'm fortunate enough to have been brought up just after the war, when the country was broke. And what did they do? Gave us homes to live in, fit for heroes. Well, that's for my parents. I wasn't a hero at that time. Free education, free school meals, orange juice, milk, etc., etc. Free university education. We all lived in communities where we felt supported and cared for. And nobody complained about paying the tax. The tax rates for the rich, until I think the 80s, when Mrs. Thatcher came in, they were up to 90% for the super rich. 90% of their money was taxed, taken in tax, but it was graduated. Nobody complained. We were building 350,000 houses, they were called council houses in those days, every year, and the parties would compete with each other to see how many they could build. Hospitals, loads of hospitals, etc., etc. And you look back and you think, what happened? I think we know the answer. Greed took hold. Nobody wants to pay any tax, and now parties compete with each other to see who will charge the least in the way of income tax, forgetting you can't get something for nothing. And now we say we can't afford to pay nurses a decent wage, or railwaymen a decent wage, or whoever it may be. We can't afford it because we don't want to pay the tax. You could say it's me being political, but I'm looking at it objectively, from a spiritual perspective. And you can't just blame the rich, the few, because how many people agree with their views? How many people think, well, I'd do the same if I could? How many people avoid paying VAT when they get the car serviced? You can't blame anybody, because the greed is within us all. Some are able to exploit it more than others. Then we have attachment to our ideas, to our beliefs, to our religion. My religion is better than your religion. Attachment to our roles. I want to be Prime Minister, I want to be President, and I'm going to keep the job when I get it, come what may. Ego. Imagine the effect that our ego has on all of us, not just the super rich or the super powerful. We all have it. We all use it in different ways, to the detriment of ourselves as well as other people. And then we have anger. Just think of what anger is doing in the world. All those bombs that are being made, those nuclear weapons, those jets, fighter jets, all those armies which are being built up, and all the ammunition and everything else that is used when we're angry. And then, I think there's one left. Anybody remind me? I think there's ego, attachment, greed, lust and anger, the 5, that's it. So they're rampant everywhere, and they're having an impact everywhere. And all I can do in these circumstances is remove them from myself. Remove those vices, remove those viruses, whatever you want to call them. And they have built up over time. They are very powerful. They affect all of us in different ways. But if we want to create a better world, if we want to clear up the mess which we're in, then really, if we want, so no, I'm not saying you have to at all. We have to look within. We have to see what needs changing inside ourselves. What's making me unhappy, and what in my behavior and my attitude is making other people unhappy. Because if I'm full of ego, someone's going to get it outside. If I'm very angry, I just won't take it out on myself. I will take it out on others. So really, it's time to return to basics. It's time to return to the true self. It's time to remember who we really are. It's time to reconnect with our values, our inner values, like love and peace, respect, honesty, responsibility. There's so many of them, but they're all part of us. They're part of our inner being, part of our inner culture. Then there's all our virtues. I mean, there's over 100 virtues. If you were to count them all, there's an enormous number. But we need to cultivate them. We need to remember them. We need to practice them. We need to be kind, loving, compassionate. And that, again, all starts with me. If I hate myself, if I blame myself, if I beat myself up, it's guaranteed I'm going to do the same to people in my life outside of me. So I think there's that saying, if you squeeze, a lemon, what do you get? Lemon juice, because that's what's in the lemon. So if you squeeze me, if you squeeze you, what's coming out? Is it something toxic, or is it something good and sweet and kind and nice? Underneath all the rubbish which we've accumulated, that's really what there is. But we need to spend time removing the rubbish. And so to help us do that, we practice Raja Yoga meditation, because it's based on this understanding that we really are powerful spiritual beings. Points of light, points of consciousness. And then we can't do it by ourselves. We've tried it by ourselves for a long time. We actually need divine support or divine intervention, both individually and collectively. So that divine intervention, or divine being, some call God, we call the Supreme Being, because our understanding is that God, in inverted commas, is a soul, the same as you or I. But that soul is the only soul that does not come into this drama of life. This soul stays outside of it all and watches or observes us all as we come into the world full of power, and then, like batteries, gradually decline and go from our highest state to our lowest. And there's no one to blame in that. It's natural. It just happens. Now's the time to face ourselves. Now's the time to reconnect with ourselves. Now is the time to recharge ourselves. And we recharge ourselves by taking time out to reflect, time out to contemplate, time out to connect with the divine, or the one, or the source, whatever you want to call that divine energy. And when we do that, then we start to feel better. Then we start to feel more alive. We start to feel hope. Then we start to want to give. and then we start to create a virtuous circle. And just like a pebble in the pond, you know, the ripples go out, don't they? So, for example, if tomorrow morning the whole world woke up and every human being just said Om Shanti and really felt it and became full of peace, imagine what would happen. No more war, no more fighting over territory. We'd all want to help each other. We'd all want to care and support each other. So it's quite radical, actually, and it's quite wonderful. So I'm just going to read a little bit from a book by Daddy Yankee. So if you're wanting a spiritual book to read, then I would suggest this one in particular, Companion of God. And it's full of wisdom from Daddy Yankee, who was one of the original members of the Brahma Kumaris and was with us for many years as the head of the organization outside of India, and then eventually all over the world. I'm sure some of you know her or remember her. So I'm just going to read this and treat it as meditation. So if you'd like to sit back and relax, do the slow, deep, gentle breathing. And just listen to the words. Don't give your mind permission to get disturbed. A disturbed mind is easily influenced. This will cost you your peace of mind. Learn to maintain your peace by freeing yourself from attachments. Competing or comparing yourself with others will not allow you to focus inwards. An inner focus allows you to keep your eye on your higher self and remember your original nature. It allows you to forge a link with the divine. Then it becomes easy to recognize useless thoughts and replace them with a spiritual perspective. Introversion replaces inner sorrow with praise for God. You feel delight. You feel renewed. God is teaching us how to turn within, so listen very carefully. Keep a check on yourself and change. Don't wait for others to say something. A calm mind is not just peaceful, it is focused, self-directing, and divine. So we'll just reflect on that for a moment or two. Okay. So really, to summarize, you know, there are challenges, great challenges for us all individually and collectively. But there is hope at the same time. We have the resources within us to make a big difference, providing we recognize them, acknowledge them, and accept them, and then put them into practice. And this is the challenge, actually, because the old ways of thinking and being are very powerful, and they will pull us to themselves. And really, we have to detach and pull ourselves away, reclaim our power, rise above all of this and go beyond it and see it for what it is, a play or a drama in which we play our parts, but we are not the drama, we are not the part, we are eternal spiritual beings, and we will carry on after all this has gone, one way or the other. So anyway, thank you for joining, thank you for listening, and I think there's a few minutes left for any questions if anybody wants to either make a comment or a question in the chat box. So we'll go to the chat and see if there's anything there.
So John, thank you for that wonderful sharing with lots of tips. And so this is an amazing time to hear what you have shared, because so much is happening in terms of the earthquake in Turkey, natural calamities, you know. While we're waiting for people to post in the chat, I'll monitor the chat so I can just maybe to stimulate people to ask you any questions, because we still have about 5 minutes or so. You mentioned about, you know, taking time to nurture, return to basics, and you talk about, you know, knowing the true self, the inner self. What do you do as tips on a daily basis to remove the rubbish? So when we talk about rubbish, it comes first in the mind, doesn't it?
Yes,
and if we are not able to get it out of the mind, it can come in words, and then it can come into our interactions. Yeah. What do you do on a daily basis to remove that?
Well, I'm lucky, really. I think anyone who is a regular BK student, you know, we have a morning class, you know, first thing in the morning, where we're fed or given, you know, some useful spiritual tips and tools and insights and understanding, and that sets me up for the day. That reminds me of how I'm meant to be. I can't claim that I'm always as good as I could be. Obviously, I'm still on a road, and in fact, this is the other thing. We have to remember we're on a journey, and there are ups and downs on the journey. So I'm not happy all the time or peaceful all the time. I still can lose it sometimes, but I know the direction in which to go. I do my best to see things from a positive perspective. So I'm always thinking, what's the benefit in this? Like, you know, I live in a retirement apartment, and there's a particular gentleman who's rampaging around, calling us all sorts of names. I couldn't repeat the names he's called me, and the things that he's done, and terrorizing old ladies who want to go into laundry rooms to do their washing. I mean, it goes on everywhere. And, you know, you have to be loving and detached. Detachment by itself is no good, because that's cold and indifferent. But actually, I send him good wishes. And in fact, for Christmas, I gave him a copy of this book, The Gift of Peace. And actually, it has made a difference. So I'd recommend this if you've got any friends who are particularly angry or upset or find it very hard to keep calm. get this, through Inspired Stillness. It costs £2.50, but it's so deep and good that, so practical things like that help a lot. And the other big thing I do my best to do is I try to disidentify from John, because I'm not John. John is just a persona. It's my latest personality from a number of births that I've had. Now that obviously raises other questions about reincarnation and things like that, but I am not John, and I can observe John and some of the things he says and does, and I can do my best to try and help John.
Yeah. I think you've answered some of what you've shared now would sort of, be the answer for this question, but I'm going to read it out anyway. And if you want to add anything else that you've shared, it says, when you say you can't change the world, but you can change yourself, what if things around you are affecting you so much that they need changing? Any comment on that?
I think it depends really on what the thing is. I mean, we always need to look for solutions to our own personal challenges. If you're living with an abusive person, then you need to be assertive, and you need, being peaceful is not about being a doormat. It's about protecting yourself and looking after yourself, but in ways which will make things better rather than worse. So, I mean, there's that sort of thing. If it's upsetting the world outside, I mean, it's unlimited. I mean, it's almost heartbreaking, walking around the streets of London. I mean, I was having a coffee, I think it was the day before yesterday, and this homeless man came in. On one level, he looked as if he'd just come from a King Lear play. His hair was all over the place. He had this beard, and his trousers were torn, and he put a foot up on the chair next to me, and it had no toes on it. It looked more like a hoof than a foot. And on one level, it's quite shocking and distressing. But he asked for money, and I don't give people money because you don't know what they're going to do with it. I offered him food and a drink. He refused that. He just wanted money. So, I didn't ignore him, and I had good wishes for him, but you have to put down limits somewhere. And you could walk around the whole of London. You could give away every penny you had, and there'd be nothing left for you. You could be on the street yourself. So giving it all away isn't necessarily the answer either. It's having good wishes for people, I think, helps a lot.
Yeah.
And then doing the best you can in individual situations, but not at the complete expense of yourself, because we have to look after ourselves first.
Yeah, that is so important. Yeah, thank you for that. Another question: how do we unhook from the outside pulls and pressures in the material world once we find ourselves hooked? Any tips on how you can do that?
Oh, well, it's good that you've realized you're hooked, because
Exactly.
you can unhook yourself. You know the answer already. It's those people who don't know they're hooked, who have become addicts, who have been taken over by social media and by advertising and everything else. So if you realize you're hooked, you're halfway there to solving it. And then it's a case of taking control of your mind and taking control of your body, maybe reducing a social media accounts, maybe not watching so much television, and then putting something better in its place. Because if you don't have anything better to put in its place, then you're going to carry on doing that. So, I mean, I have a television, but I don't often, watch it. In fact, I got it mainly for the grandchildren, but they don't come anymore. They're too big now. And so I keep it in the wardrobe.
Does that mean you go into the wardrobe to look at it when you need to? Hope not.
Yeah. Well, occasionally I take it out of the wardrobe. I mean, I did the other day to watch a film which looked quite good, a deep, meaningful film, rather than watching loads of rubbish. You know.
Yeah.
Uh,
And this is so important, what you were sharing earlier, about, what you take in from, what's coming towards you and how you need to protect yourself. I just want to acknowledge that there was someone asking for the name of the author of the book that you've put, but when you mentioned Inspired Stillness, that is a website that you can access all the Brahma Kumaris publications. So if the website can go on the chat, that would be great. People can look at it. But the title of the books was Gift of Peace, wasn't it?
Yeah, Gift of Peace.
Yeah.
Companion of God. And then I've written one myself called Breaking Through the Darkness, How to Defeat Depression, Anxiety and Stress, a Spiritual Perspective. This one is available on Amazon, as well as Inspired Stillness.
And I want to say that I have read it and it's wonderful. And you've given such good tips in that for people who are, finding it challenging to cope. And during the pandemic, I know a lot of people would have had taken benefit from some of the tips that you've mentioned in that book. So thank you for that, John.
Well, thank you. And I didn't pay you to say that, did I?
No, you didn't. I'm talking from my experience.
All right.
So just
if you could put a review on Amazon, that would be good, please.
I will, yes. So just one final bit I wanted to mention, and there are no more questions, but I know at the end of the talk, you're sharing, you mentioned about how important it is to have divine intervention. And, what do you do then, John? How do you create that relationship with that divine being? Because I know in many faiths, the divine is placed so high up that we are not able to have that connection. We go through others to reach that connection. From your experience of practicing Raj Yoga and in your journey on your spiritual development, how do you do it? Do you want to share that? Only if you feel comfortable.
Yeah, I do feel comfortable. Yeah, no, I think you have to be actually honest. I mean, understanding that God is a soul, same as you or I, is actually the big game changer. And that soul has personality. It's not an old man in the sky, judging and condemning and blaming. That soul is a being of love and peace and happiness. And we have a little picture. Have I got one to hand?
I didn't mean for you to get. Maybe it could be shown at the end. Oh, there you are.
So a point of light, and this helps a lot actually. And I usually sit down, and in meditation, you've got to focus my mind on something. So I start with that point of light. And actually, the first time I was introduced to that point of light as a symbolic representation of God, and I sat down in front of it, and all I could say was, I hate you, because of all the things that have been done to me in God's name. Nuns strapping me with, and priests threatening me with hellfire and damnation for not going to mass on Sundays. So, and it was quite amazing what happened, because the picture came alive and all these rays of light came out at me. So I sit in front of that picture, and then there's a communication which goes on, because God actually is there for everyone. You don't have to have anybody. In fact, he's teaching us to become independent and just rely on him and nobody else, which is a big challenge. And so that helps a lot. You can have a conversation, etc. And another thing which really helps is sometimes I write a letter in meditation. I'll say, what am I meant to do now? Or what should I do about this? And then I meditate for a few minutes, and then I write down the answer. Because write the letter on a piece of paper, dear God or whoever. We often say Baba, because Baba is an Indian word for dad, because God doesn't want to have big divisions between us. So I might say, dear Baba, what do I need to do about X, Y, or Z? And then after a couple of minutes meditation, I write down whatever comes into my mind with my non-writing hand. And it's amazing the messages which you can get, actually, very helpful messages.
Wonderful.
Yes. And then another thing, you can imagine a big spiritual fire in front of you and just think, I want to get rid of all of this, and then just say, I want to burn this, I want to get rid of that. So we talk about the fire of yoga. So God is there like a super cleanser. He will absorb or take away all these things which are actually holding us back and holding us down.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, John. So just one question before we end, and it's just what you said. Why use the non-writing hand?
Because you're so busy writing the letters or the words that your conscious mind can't, your critical mind can't stop it. Because if you did it with your other hand, you'd be saying, what a load of old rubbish, and you'd actually stop the message coming through. Whereas the other way, your mind is open and you're so absorbed in writing the answer that you don't have time to judge or criticize what's coming through.
Lovely. Thank you so much. It's been such a joy listening to you and sharing from your experience. I hope I didn't put you in the spot too much.
No, you were your usual nice self.
So just to let the audience know that on the chat there is the link for the website Inspired Stillness. So if you do want to browse our BK shop, you can get these books that John's mentioned. So thank you again on behalf of all of us at Bradford Inner Space. It's always been a joy to have you, and have a wonderful rest of the evening. And yeah, I can't say, safe journey home, because you are home, and that's the beauty.
Yeah, are you opening up now? Is the center open at all?
Yes, we are. So there will be a few slides looking at what we're offering. So for people who are still on, please stay on, and we will have the slides coming up. So John, thank you for everything. And
thank you. And anybody who's watching, please go there. It's a wonderful space and you'll learn a lot.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Okay.
Okay, then. So I'll disappear, leave you to it.
Yes. Thanks, John. Bye.
Okay,
bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks for inviting me in the first place.
Okay.